who is the right next choice for the manager? If there were 3 candidates who come to mind for you, who would those be? And have you heard names floated around? I know Jesse Marsh is available, but is he a right fit for this group? Many would argue no with his playing style. So what would be the ideal candidates for the job?
I mean, it's so hard to tell for a couple different reasons. One, I don't know what they're going to do with sporting director role. Like, if they hire an American in the sporting director role, I think his list of candidates is going to look completely different versus if they go international. The other side of this is budget. The U.S. soccer is not rolling in the money like they were before. They've had a lot of different expenses over the last few years that have kind of whittled that down. So can they compete with what the highest paid coaches are making? Even guys that are below that, Roberto Martinez, for example, like that's way above what Greg Berhalter was making. So knowing but if you're the board of U.S. soccer, you're looking at the 2026 World Cup and saying, hey, we're expecting a lot of money coming in. Like, let's go ahead and put money into this coaching role. The last X factor for me is the biggest name that anyone can come up with for the job. And I've heard could have some legitimacy in terms of interest. And that's Pep Guardiola. Realistically, are you going to get Pep Guardiola for 3 years to manage the national team? Probably not, right? Like, he's with Man City right now, going for that Champions League. He's got, the way he structured his deal, it's a 1 year plus a 1 year option. But if you have a chance to land Pep Guardiola in 2025 and you get a year with him ahead of the World Cup, I think that's got to be your priority. And then the question would be, what kind of coach can you hire to be in charge for 2 years? If you think there's no chance for Pep, or like it's a small percentage chance, then who's the best candidate out there? I think the obvious names are going to be the guys who have been successful in MLS or American. I think those are the guys who are going to come up, or Jesse Marsh being somebody who's been overseas. I think even though he hasn't had a ton of experience, Steve Cherundolo's name will come up. And we know Peter Vermees just inked a 5-year extension. So I think Jim Curtin's name could be added to the mix as well. But it's just tough with the international candidates because, man, like, if they can spend $5 million a year on a coach, all right, or $10 million a year on a coach, okay, we can start talking about some of those big names. But if they're working in like a $2 million range, that list gets just cut like by 75%. And so a lot of it's going to come down to what the board says, like, we can afford, we can pay.
Yeah, this is pretty crazy. I mean, I hadn't really thought about bringing Pep in 25 and what the lead up would be to that, an Anthony Hudson, a Dave Sarachan, as we've seen before. I guess there might be an argument that you could bring in a Pep-like assistant, Dominic Torrent, who coached at NYCFC and obviously was an assistant manager for Pep for many years. That would be, I don't know, he's familiar with the American system and the American players. So I had really thought about that before. Paul, thank you for enlightening us in that way.
Well, now, would you take it if you could, Jimmy?
I mean, Rodolfo Borrell was connected to U.S. Soccer at one point too, and he's Pep's first assistant. But could you imagine telling everybody sit tight for 2 years and just like the project is still moving? We're not there yet. I mean, maybe
he did that already.
I mean, I'm curious what you guys think. You all played for the U.S. Like, do you think you need a candidate? Like, I've talked to people behind the scenes that say, hey, with this group, you need somebody who has experience coaching in Europe. You need somebody with a big personality that all those guys are going to respect and listen to. I have other people who say, like, no, you need an American. Like, what would you guys do? Do you think that there's priority of one over the other?
All I know is Charlie's brother said bring in heaps. In the comments, just
raise the roof.
And I know exactly what he's thinking. He's like, if you're going to mention some of these names, Jim Curtin, bring in Jay Heaps. This group needs someone who, one, is going to command respect. Two, knows exactly how to get the best out of this group of players. That's the only way you're going to get this group to respect you, to listen to you, to drive this team forward, to get into a World Cup semifinal. That's my opinion, is that if you can get a Pep Guardiola, a Jose Mourinho, someone who knows talent, has won, is a proven, and maybe is done with the club side, is ready to try something new and has that passion. Plus you're talking about a World Cup on home soil in North America. This is a game changer. That's when you make that move. And I think that type of coaching decision would change the narrative within this group.
Paul, we talked about
I just don't think it's going to be something that's going to motivate guys. If you're saying, hey, we're not sure who we're going to go with. We have a couple of guys. So we're going to go with Jason Christ. And everyone's like, Jesus Christ, you know? So
Jesus Christ. That's pretty good, Charlie. I will say though, Paul, we all agreed. We all agreed that like if there was a chance, and we've been talking about this quite a bit, if there was a chance for a big swing, even if Jose Mourinho, for who he is and all the complexities that come with that, and all the difficulties that would come with that, the attitude, the tone, but having somebody of that magnitude that could demand respect of the players, clean up a lot of obviously some of the drama we have right now, demand respect of the media, demand respect that they have to then go and earn it in a way. I think that idea we all agreed upon being something we have to take that chance, right? Yeah. That could go really wrong when you talk about a Jose Mourinho. But we also believe like this is that window to 2026. We gotta swing big was sort of where we all landed. At least
the conversation should start there, right? Like Yogi Love, who's like not working right now, Jose, who's doing well at Roma, but and by the way, he's making like 16 million euros a year net. So like we're talking like
that's when U.S. Soccer looks at the.
Are those all zeros or
yeah, exactly. That's like the reality of this business right now. It's gonna get you sit down with Josie. You're buying the espresso, and then when the number gets slid across the table, you're like, check, please, probably, right? I mean, like, but there are guys out there that are available that are going to be interested. And if you want a year or two off from club ball and you're taking a big job, like this is a good one to take. Host of the World Cup, all these young players, they'll be intrigued. It's about the money, man. I mean, how much money are you willing to spend? I don't feel like I have a clear answer of that yet from trying to poke around. Maybe when we see who gets hired as sporting director, we'll have a better idea. When that press conference happens or whatever, like that's the place to push. But I mean, when I saw just the other day, I was doing research for this topic and I was looking up what Jose Mourinho was making because he made a lot of sense to me as like one of the names you'll go for. And when I saw that number, I was like, "Woo, that's real money."
Yeah, so Paul, we appreciate you and you spending some time with us, and thank you for all the hard work that you're doing behind the scenes and all the great writing you're doing with The Athletic and reporting. We have one question though, and usually we have a question of like, what's your best jersey swap if we have a player on? But for you, I just want to know, how do you feel about getting competition with Heath Pierce about breaking news? And because Heath is over here breaking news about Gio Reyna on the regular.
He said a big article's dropping.
I got one thing right, and now like if I say like good morning, people are like, oh, no, it must be
hey man, this isn't new for me. It might be new for you guys, but back in the day, I covered Orlando City. They took him in the expansion draft, and I was getting ready with the story. Heath Pierce isn't coming. Whatever, and Heath put it out on Twitter first before I had the chance to break my news. So I've been competing with Heath since 2015.
Damn, Heath. Why you have to do Tenorio like that, man?
This is the way it works. I remember when I got traded from FC Dallas to Chivas, I went in there, got traded. I tweeted it out, and then FC Dallas was like, people in the office were like, oh, that guy's what an asshole. Like I'm like, yo, this is my life. You don't get to either you have your stuff together and you can put it out when you're ready, or I get to share the news that, like, guess what? I've just been moved to another state. And I remember thinking about that being a moment where, like, I was hated for it, as if I was supposed to be like, hey, your life is ruined right now. But if you could just sit tight on that for a little bit while we put out this. Yeah, man. Of course I was. I wanted to have at least my own say in the narrative, you know.
Man, get to go back to LA, but had to play for Chivas USA. So his life was ruined.
They were like the downside is that, or the upside is you go into LA. The downside is you got to play with a guy named Jimmy Conrad.
I had 2 games before I was out.
The upside is you're shipping at least 6 goals a game.
Yeah,
I know you all kept those
Zach
Chivas
Thornton's
jerseys,
name. What's
though.
back on Zach Thornton's name?